Hi, today we are going to talk about the last group of living things in your whole primary school, which is the decomposer. But your journey from finishing whatever you learned for PSLE is far from over. Okay, this is a very short topic. It is probably one of the shortest in P3, but it's still quite important because even for P6 topics, sometimes you still be tested. Okay. Now, during the last video, we have learned about animals, and before that we have learned about plants. So they are the two main groups of living things. So we have covered the two main groups of living things, and this is the last one, like I mentioned, decomposer. Okay. Decomposers, they are also considered living things because just like plants and animals, they have these four characteristics. By now you should be very familiar with these four characteristics. It should be at your fingertips. Okay, exam come out, you must immediately know these four characteristics. Okay, and you must also know what they meant lah. So under this decomposer group, right, there's actually two subgroups. Just like under plants there's flowering, non-flowering. Under animals there's reptiles, amphibians, birds, and whatnot. Okay, so for decomposers, the two main groups is your fungi and bacteria. Okay, actually you won't be tested quite as often on bacteria. You'll be tested more on fungi, but sometimes bacteria will still be tested, so you still need to know it. Okay, but they are often confused between fungi and bacteria. Students often confuse them, although they are both decomposer, right? But actually they are two different groups. Okay, so later when we go through, I'll tell you what are their main differences and you should know. Okay, so both fungi and bacteria, they are decomposer. And what is actually decomposer? Okay, decomposer comes from this word called decomposition. Later I'll tell you what's decomposition, but for now you just need to know that a decomposer, which is your fungi and bacteria, they feed on dead and alive. Okay, for plants, they make their own food. For animals, they feed on others. But for fungi and bacteria, right, they feed on dead and alive. Okay, so when they feed on them, what happens is this dead and alive, okay, regardless if they are alive, they'll turn them into this thing called simple substances. Okay, as of now, I can just think of simple substances as things that are very, very tiny. Okay, so tiny that you cannot even see it. Okay, and usually it is returned back to the soil. Okay, why is used returned to the soil is mainly for the plants. Okay, and of course for other reasons, but we'll not go in depth into why they do that. But you just have to know that they turn all this dead and alive into very, very tiny substances called simple substances. Okay, you must remember this word called simple substances. It is a word that you need to know how to spell. Okay, because you need to use it during exam. Another key benefits of decomposer is when they turn this into very tiny substances called simple substances, it prevents the earth from being overcrowded. Okay, I believe you all should know what's a dinosaur. So obviously dinosaurs, we have found their bones. They are very huge. Most of them is very huge. They have roamed the earth, okay, in the past. But why do we not see their dead bodies lying around now? Okay, or let's say for example, there are a lot of dead animals. Every day there are animals that die. But where is their dead bodies? The wild animals, where are their dead bodies? Okay, all these dead animals, actually they have been fed on by this fungi and bacteria, which feed on dead, and then they turn them into simple substances. That's why they are gone. Okay, so this prevents the earth from being overcrowded. Can you imagine if there's no fungi and bacteria? All these dead animals, dead plants, as well as their waste, they just keep piling up on earth. Then there will be more and more of them. Okay, so actually it's also a good thing that you have fungi and bacteria. Okay, some fungi and bacteria, right, they are called microorganisms. Microorganism generally refers to living things that are very, very tiny. Okay, they are not simple substances because they are living things. Simple substances is dead already, so they are no longer alive. They are just being turned into very small pieces called simple substances. But microorganism is living things, but they are very small that you cannot see. Okay, so if they cannot be seen, how can we see them? Is we can use this thing called microscope. Okay, in some primary school you would have used it by the time you are P6. Okay, but definitely in secondary school you get to use it. Your teacher will give you a piece of chicken flesh or a leaf to let you look at the parts of the parts inside the plant or animals, which is called cells, but you don't have to know them. So what a microscope do is it will enlarge whatever things you put on it by 100 times or even bigger. Okay, depending on how good your microscope is or how expensive it is. Okay, so basically you can look at very, very tiny living things under a microscope because they allow you to zoom in. So because they are called, they can be only seen under a microscope, right? So that's why they are called microorganism. Organism means living thing, meaning living things that can be only seen under a microscope. Okay. Now, so what is decomposition? So as I was telling you, fungi and bacteria, they do this process called decomposition. So decomposition is when they turn dead and waste into simple substances. So this process where they turn dead and waste, okay, or sometimes things that's alive into very tiny pieces is called decomposition. Okay, so from a big piece to very, very small and tiny pieces called simple substances. Okay, so this is a general idea of how fungi and bacteria works in our world. Okay, definitely you have your plants that create food, so animals will feed on the plants, and then there will be animals that feed on other animals, but eventually, regardless the animals that feeds on the plant or feeds on other animals, they eventually will still produce waste. They eventually die as well. Okay, so what happens to their waste and what happens when they die? Okay, when they are dead, okay, fungi and bacteria will feed on them and then turn them into simple substances. Please know the word simple substances. You know how to spell. Okay, and then they will put them into the soil. Likewise, plants can also die, right? So that's why there's an arrow here. Okay, so when plants die, the fungi and bacteria feed on them, or when there's a waste from the plants. Okay, for example, it can be a dead leaf. Okay, the fungi and bacteria also turn all these into simple substances, which is returned to the soil. Then the plants can take up all this from the soil. Okay, so you can see that actually it is like a cycle. Okay, these things just keep moving and moving. Okay, in a circular way. Okay. Okay, let's talk about the first group of decomposer, which is known as the fungi. Okay, fungi, they reproduce by spores, which is a very interesting thing. Okay, if you have paid attention and if you have studied and memorized the characteristic of plants, you know that non-flowering plants do the same thing. Non-flowering plants also reproduce by spores. So a lot of students will be confused when they see spores. They think, oh, must be non-flowering plant. Not necessary. Fungi also reproduce by spores. Then the question is, if non-flowering plants reproduce by spores, fungi also reproduce by spores, then why isn't fungi non-flowering plant? The reason lies in the fact that non-flowering plants are plants, therefore they make food. That means they trap light. Okay, they use light and then they create their own food. They don't need to feed. Okay, no feeding is involved. They can create food by themselves. But for fungi, as I mentioned earlier, they feed on dead and waste, right? Or dead and alive, right? So since they cannot make their own food, therefore they are not plants. Okay. For plants, they need air, warmth, and water, right? Fungi is also very similar. In order for them to reproduce, for them to grow, they also need air, warmth, and water. Okay, but for when they ask you what do fungi need, you can actually say air, warmth, and moisture. What is moisture? Moisture is also water, but it doesn't have to be liquid water. That means it doesn't have to be the water that you on your tap, those kind of water. It can also be water in the air. It can also be water in air, which is known as water vapor. But you may not be familiar with this word, but basically, actually all around us, right, there's water that we cannot see that's floating in the air. Okay, these water are in gas state, so we cannot see them. So it's called they are in air. They are in a form of air, basically. So it's called water vapor. Okay, so that's why you realize sometimes fungi can also grow on places that doesn't seem to have water. Okay, later we'll talk about those kind of fungi. Okay, and like I tell you, fungi feed on dead and alive. Okay, now these are a few common examples of fungi that often come up for exam, so you must know them. Okay, let's see. Okay, so this is a bracket fungi. If you go to Bukit Timah Nature Reserve, okay, or Mercury Reservoir, those kind of places there's a lot of trees, sometimes you get to spot this kind of bracket fungi. It usually grows on tree trunks. Okay, then you have a mushroom. I believe everyone knows what's a mushroom. It comes in different form, but some mushroom is poisonous, so be careful. Puffballs, it looks a bit like mushroom. Okay, your mole. Okay, mole, there are many different kind of mole. Recently there's this COVID COVID-19, right? So a lot of shopping malls is closed. So the newspaper has been reporting that wow, a lot of leather products, that means materials made from animal skin start growing mold. Also, there are all kinds of mold, but the more commonly tested mold in primary school is bread mold lah. Bread mold is commonly seen at home if you usually buy bread. Sometimes you realize your parents tell you, hey, the bread cannot be eaten anymore because it's moldy. So what's moldy? Moldy, that means they are growing fungi on it. Usually it looks greenish like this. Okay, so the food is bad already. So the bread cannot be eaten anymore because there's fungi growing on it, and then you can get food poisoning. Okay, truffle. Okay. By the way, that was a zoom in of a fungi. If you look close up, that's roughly how fungi look like. The other one recently, which is very popular, is a truffle. It is also a form of fungi. The people has been selling it in the market, and then people has been using it to make chips, pizza, and whatnot. Okay, tastes very good to some people. So the last one is yeast. Okay, yeast is a very special kind of fungi. Okay, it's also commonly tested. Unlike the rest of most of the other fungi, yeast is very special in the sense that it is what you call a unicellular organism, and it is also microorganism. Okay, if you notice, most of the fungi we mentioned just now can be seen right with your eyes, but it is actually under seen under the microscope. So actually you can't see it unless you have a microscope. So it's also a microorganism. The reason why it's a microorganism is because it is unicellular. What is unicellular? You don't have to know this word yet. You have to know it next year No, sorry, P5 I think. You learn about unit of life. That means it's a single cell organism. Okay, basically all of us is made of this thing called cells in our body. For us, we are made of millions of cells. But for yeast, right, it's made of one cell only. So it's so tiny that we cannot see it because each of them is only one small tiny part. Okay, so that's the main difference between yeast and the rest. So I repeat again. Okay, most of the other fungi are single cell, or they are not microscopic. That means you can see them with our eyes, but yeast cannot. You must use a microscope then you can see. So let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of fungi. Okay, advantages means what? So what's the good thing about having fungi? What's the bad thing about having fungi? Fungi can also be good in the sense that it can also be fed on. Like for example, the most commonly consumed fungi is a mushroom, but not all mushroom is can be eaten. Some mushroom is actually poisonous. Okay, it can also be made into alcohol. Alcohol is like your beer, your wine. Okay, but I mean for primary school kids, you're not supposed to consume them. It can also be made into food. Some of the common kind of food that we always eat, okay, is your cheese, your soy sauce, and your tempeh. This one is your tempeh lah. Tempeh it's usually mainly used for Malay cuisine. I don't know if I eat before. It's quite nice also. It can also be made into medicine like penicillin. Okay, you don't need to know what kind of medicine, but you just need to know that it can be made into medicine. So that's a good thing about fungi. So as you can see, fungi actually has a lot of uses Okay, on top of the fact that they help us feed on dead and waste and break them down into simple substances. So they have all these additional advantages. But there are also disadvantages, meaning the bad things about fungi. So fungi can also be bad. So as I was telling you, fungi can feed on dead and alive, right? So what alive things does it feed on? I don't know if you have heard this term called athlete's foot. It's when it's like a foot rot condition. Okay, it grows on the leg. Okay, usually because of the fact that you have poor hygiene. Okay, I mean I'm not a doctor. I cannot tell you the exact reason, but moisture is involved, so you have water content there. So probably because of your sweat. Okay, so as I was telling you, fungi grows when there's air, warmth, and water, right? So it feeds on when there's moisture. They can also grow. Let's say your leg has moisture, not properly clean. So when fungi grows on it, it will cause rot, and then there will be a very bad smell. Also, we call it athlete's foot. Okay, so they feed on our skin as well, unfortunately. Okay, it also cause illnesses. It can also cause the food to turn bad, like just now I told you. When there's moisture, fungi can grow on the food, and then the food cannot be eaten anymore. Otherwise, you get food poisoning. Okay, some fungi is actually poisonous as well. Like I tell you, some mushrooms. Okay, this one, one of the most commonly tested fungi I told you is mushroom. So what do they usually test you about mushroom? Okay, they'll test you about uses, so you can say that it can be eaten, but some is poisonous. Okay, the other thing they like to test you about mushroom is their parts. Okay, so the top part is called the caps. Okay, you can just remember it like, you know, hat. Okay, it's on top, so it's called cat. Then the middle part is called the gills, like fish gills. Okay, and then the bottom part is the stalk. You can think of a stalk of the flower stalk lah. Okay, so actually it's quite easy to remember. Okay, it does come up for exam. Okay, especially in P3. So please know them. So as I was telling you, fungi reproduce through spores, right? And mushroom is a fungi, right? So mushroom also has spores, and the spores is found in the gills. And again, sometimes during exam for P3, they'll also test you where can the spores of the mushroom be found. So you must know it's under the gills lah. Okay, now let's talk about bacteria. Okay, so the thing about fungi and bacteria is fungi, like I tell you, most of them can be seen, but you know, you have yeast that cannot be seen. They must be seen under a microscope. So bacteria are also something like yeast in the sense that they are microorganisms. Okay, they can only be seen under a microscope because they are single cell. That means they are one cell by themselves. Cell, like I told you earlier, is basically our body is all made out of cells, but we are made of millions of cells. But for bacteria, they are only one by themselves. That's why they are so small. Okay, this is the key difference between fungi and bacteria. Fungi, like I tell you, they reproduce by spores, but bacteria, they do not reproduce by spores. That's one of their main difference, so you must know that. Okay, so a lot of students mix them up, but the main difference you must know: fungi reproduce by spores, but bacteria reproduce by this thing called binary fission. You do not have to know this; it will not be tested in the whole of primary school, but you just need to know what binary fission means. That means they split themselves up. Okay, for animals, they give birth on eggs, right? For plants, they reproduce by spores. Fungi also reproduce by spores, so they reproduce. But bacteria reproduce is something like duplicate, like photocopying themselves. So they are one cell, right? Then they'll grow big. They become big. Then when they become big enough, they'll tear themselves into two, split themselves up lah. Then they become two similar smaller cells. Then again, these two will grow big again. These two will grow big. Then after that, they'll split themselves again. Then they become four, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's the main difference between bacteria and fungi. Please know this. Okay, they will, just like fungi lah, they also need air, warmth, and water, which is moisture, to grow. Okay, they also feed on dead and alive, just like fungi. So actually, like I say, they are very similar between fungi and bacteria. The only difference is the way that they reproduce. Okay, let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of fungi. Yakult should be a very familiar brand with you all in Singapore. Okay, and Vitagen. Okay, they are called cultured milk lah. Okay, so they are actually made from bacteria, but you cannot always think. Wow, you always heard people saying, "Wow, a little get bacteria." Or not. Actually, bacteria is not always bad lah. Okay, because just like fungi, bacteria can also be good and bad. So bacteria can also be made into many different things, like for example, food and drinks as stated here. Okay, which is quite commonly used, right? If you look at it, you use it almost at least once a week lah, or if not every day. Okay, they can also be made into medicine. So bacteria has also a lot of good uses to it. Okay, but bacteria also some bad points lah. It can cause you to fall sick. It can like all this. Okay, one of the most commonly form of bacteria is food poisoning lah. Okay, so you may have diarrhea in this body part called large intestine. So your body cannot, basically you cause your body not to be able to absorb water. That's why your waste, which is your feces, the waste that comes out of your body is watery, which is what we call diarrhea, which is why it's dangerous lah. Because if it's prolonged, your body will not have enough water for very long, and then you will dehydrate lah, and dehydration can lead to death. That's why usually when you have very long diarrhea, you need to go and see a doctor. Also, which is caused by bacteria also, and also it can cause food to turn bad lah, just like fungi. Okay, there are quite a bit of information for you to remember. So here's a summary table. I've also included the two other groups of living things, namely the animals and the plants. I split up the plants into flowering and non-flowering group, as well as decomposer I split into fungi and bacteria. Actually, in primary 3, they will usually use the word fungi and bacteria because the word decomposers is not introduced yet. Okay. So for animals, they have to feed on others. For fungi and bacteria, they also need to depend on others. Okay, so animals and fungi and bacteria, they are same in the sense that they need to depend on others for food. But plants is very independent. They can make their own food. They don't need to rely on any other living organisms for food. They can create food just by light. As for movement, I'm talking about moving from location to location. Okay, only animals is capable of moving from location to location. Plants, they definitely cannot move about. Okay, but likewise for fungi and bacteria, they also cannot. Okay, like for example, mushroom, they only grow in one place. Okay, then in terms of respond to changes, they all can respond to changes lah, because they are all living things. Okay, the other main difference between these three groups of animals is how they reproduce. For animals, depending on the group they are in, okay, like for example, amphibians, they lay eggs, mammals, they give birth. Okay, so depending on the group they are in, but generally, they can only give birth or lay eggs. Okay, for plants, there are two different ways of reproduction. Flowering plants reproduce through seeds. I told you before, because flowering plants have flower turn into flower bear fruits. Fruits contain seeds, right? So they can reproduce with seeds. But non-flowering plants, because they don't have flower, so they cannot bear fruits, and therefore they don't have seeds, so they reproduce through spores. Okay, fungi and non-flowering plant is the same in the sense that they both reproduce through spores lah. But like I tell you, fungi is not plant because they cannot make food. Okay, they have to depend on other for food. Okay, then fungi and bacteria, their main difference is fungi reproduce through spores, but bacteria reproduce by dividing themselves. Okay, so this is a overview and comparison of not just this topic. It's the overview and comparison of all the living things that we've learned in P3 so far, which is quite an important table. Okay, so if you can understand and you can know all their differences, then I think your understanding is almost there already. Okay, so otherwise you have to buck up a bit. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. If you can, please share these videos with your friends. Thank you.